Right now, in a government building in Washington, D.C., there is a room where people spend their entire workday piecing together money that has been burned, shredded, dissolved in acid, eaten by insects, buried underground for decades, chewed by dogs, soaked in sewage, and in at least one documented case, pulled out of a cow's stomach. These people are not detectives. They are employees of the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, and their job is to answer one of the strangest questions in all of finance. Is this still money? $100 bill that was ripped clean in half. A stack of 20s fused together by a house fire. A wad of cash pulled from the wreckage of a flooded basement, so damaged that the denominations are no longer visible. Someone has to look at these remains and make a decision. This is the story of what happens to damaged money from the moment you hand it to a bank teller to the moment the government decides whether those mangled pieces of paper are worth anything at all. Let's start at the bank counter, because that's where most people's understanding begins and ends. You walk in with a bill that's torn in half. Maybe your toddler got to your wallet. Maybe it went through a paper shredder by accident. You hand both pieces to the teller and ask for a replacement. In most cases, the teller looks at the bill, confirms that both halves clearly belong to the same note, and exchanges it for a fresh one on the spot. The damaged bill goes into a separate drawer, and you walk out with your money. Simple. But the rules behind that simple exchange are more precise than you'd think. In the United States, the standard is straightforward. If you have more than 50% of a bill and the denomination is identifiable, any bank will accept it and exchange it at full face value. Both halves of a clean tear, full value. A bill with a corner ripped off, full value. A bill missing a third of its surface but still showing the denomination and serial number, full value. The logic is practical. The government doesn't want people losing money because of accidents, and as long as more than half the note exists, the risk of someone trying to redeem both halves separately is manageable. But what if the damage is worse? What if you can't tell what denomination the bill was? What if the note has been so badly burned that it's a brittle black rectangle? What if you have a brick of bills fused together by heat or water, and you can't separate them without destroying them further? This is where the bank can no longer help, and the case gets escalated to the place most people have never heard of: the Mutilated Currency Division. The Mutilated Currency Division is a unit within the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, part of the U.S. Department of the Treasury. It has existed for over a century, and its sole purpose is to examine currency that is too damaged for normal exchange and determine how much, if anything, it's worth. The division processes roughly 22,000 claims a year, handling an estimated $30 million in mutilated currency annually. People mail their damaged money to this office in packages, envelopes, and sometimes in the original container it was damaged in. A jar of coins fused together by fire, a wallet recovered from a car accident, a bag of bills pulled from a demolished wall where someone's grandfather hid his savings 50 years ago. The examiners in this division are specialists. They use tweezers, magnifying glasses, chemical solvents, and specialized lighting to identify denominations, verify serial numbers, and count how much usable currency exists in each submission. For burned money, the process is extraordinarily delicate. Charred bills can disintegrate at the slightest touch. Examiners sometimes spend days on a single submission, carefully separating fused layers of ash that were once a stack of hundreds, trying to identify enough fragments to confirm the denomination and count. If they can verify that more than 50% of each bill is present, the claim is paid at full face value. If less than 50% remains, but the examiner can determine that the missing portions were destroyed rather than separated for double redemption, a partial payment may still be issued. The stories that come through this office are extraordinary. Farmers have mailed in currency eaten by livestock, bills that passed through the entire digestive system of a cow and emerged on the other end, stained and partially dissolved, but technically still legal tender. Families have submitted money recovered from house fires, where the heat fused hundreds of bills into a solid block that looks like a charcoal briquette, but contains thousands of dollars. One famous case involved a man who buried his life savings in his backyard during the Great Depression. Decades later, his descendants dug up the container and found the bills had decomposed into a damp, moldy mass. The Mutilated Currency Division spent months picking it apart and ultimately redeemed over 90% of the original amount. Not every submission has a happy ending. The division rejects claims when the currency cannot be verified. If you mail in a pile of green confetti and claim it was $10,000, but the examiners can't identify serial numbers, security features, or denominations, you get nothing back. Intentional destruction is also treated differently. If evidence suggests the money was deliberately damaged as part of a fraud scheme, the case is referred to law enforcement. And the division has seen its share of fraud attempts. People submitting stacks of ones with a single hundred on top, hoping the examiners won't look closely. They always look closely. It's literally all they do. The timeline for processing a claim can be surprisingly long. Simple cases, a clean tear or a single burned bill, might be resolved in weeks. Complex cases involving large amounts of heavily damaged currency can take 6 months to a year. The division processes claims in the order they're received, with no expedited option. If you mail in a shoebox full of burned savings, you wait in the same line as everyone else. Now, what about the rest of the world? Most developed countries have similar mechanisms. The European Central Bank allows exchange of damaged euro banknotes as long as more than 50% is presented. The Bank of England operates a comparable mutilated note service. Japan's system is the most precisely tiered. More than 2/3 of a damaged yen note gets full value. Between 2/5 and 2/3, half value. Less than 2/5, nothing. But here's the detail that most people never consider. What happens to all the damaged currency after it's been redeemed? The answer is destruction, but on a scale that's hard to comprehend. The Federal Reserve removes damaged and worn bills from circulation continuously. Currency that is too worn, too dirty, or too damaged to continue circulating is pulled by Federal Reserve banks, verified by high-speed counting machines, and shredded. The U.S. destroys roughly $5 to $7 billion worth of currency every single year, just from normal wear and tear. The shredded remains, thin green confetti, are sometimes packaged and sold as souvenirs at the Bureau of Engraving and Printing gift shop. You can buy a bag of $5,000 in shredded cash for about $5. The irony is not lost on anyone. The average lifespan of a bill depends on its denomination. A $1 bill lasts roughly 6 years. A 5 lasts about 5. A 20 survives roughly 8. A $100 bill, which changes hands less frequently, can last over 20 years. When any bill becomes too worn, it's pulled, shredded, and replaced with a freshly printed note. Old money dies and new money is born, in a continuous, invisible cycle that most people never notice. The next time you find a bill in your pocket that's torn, stained, or falling apart, know this. That piece of paper has traveled through hundreds, maybe thousands of hands. It has been folded into wallets, dropped on floors, run through washing machines, tucked into birthday cards, and exchanged for everything from coffee to cars. And when it finally becomes too damaged to continue, it won't simply vanish. It will make one last trip to a room where someone will hold it under a light, study it with the patience of an archaeologist, and decide whether it still counts. Because money isn't paper, it's a promise printed on paper. And as long as enough of that promise survives, the government will honor it. But damaged cash isn't even the most common fear people have about everyday systems they trust without thinking. Every day, billions of people step into a metal box, press a button, and let a machine lift them hundreds of feet into the air, held up by nothing but steel cables. And somewhere in the back of everyone's mind is the same question nobody asks out loud. What if every cable snaps at once? The answer involves physics, engineering, and a safety system invented in 1854 that has saved more lives than most people will ever know. That story is next, and if you don't want to miss it, you know what to do.